Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thanks for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, talking to celebrities about before they were famous and their rise to the top and exactly what it was. Was there a big break? Was it a gradual rise, something that happened that changed their life forever? I wanted to take this time to remember the late, great John Lodge from the Moody Blues, who just passed away this morning, October 10th. He was 82 years old. Not only was John Lodge a guest on the Celebrity Jobber podcast a little over a year ago, episode 98, if you wanted to go back and check it out on celebrityjobber.com. But John was the father of a friend of mine, Christian Lodge, who I worked with for a few years in Fort Myers, Florida. He was an ad executive at a radio station that I worked at. We developed a friendship over time without me actually knowing that his father was the legendary Moody Blues frontman. So my thoughts and prayers go out to Christian Lodge and the entire Lodge family. Moody Blues singer John Lodge passes away today at the age of 82 years old. And once again, if you wanted to go back and check out the full interview, it's episode number 98. And you can go to celebrityjobber.com. Check out all past guests and episodes. We're streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Would love you to subscribe, and if you like the podcast, would love a 5-star rating. Please also leave a review. You can also follow on Instagram, celebrity_jobber_podcast, or our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/the@celebrityjobber. My guest this week, very talented, started off as a newsman, transitioned into a musician, and now a song that he created in the 90s, Round Ball Rock, is the new nostalgic theme song of the NBA this year in 2025. We'll talk about his early life, his family, what they did. How did John Tesh become the Renaissance man that he is today? Hosts his own radio show. I mean, the guy does it all. So without further ado, John Tesh is my guest this week here on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
There he is.
What's going on? What's happening?
How are you, John?
I'm doing well, thanks.
You know what's funny? I was waiting for you, and the only thing going through my head was da 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 da. It's kind of amazing when First of all, I'm kind of mesmerized by stuff like that. You know, being in this business, like sound design, and kind of excites me a little bit. And I didn't know that was your song for a lot of years, and it is just so synonymous with the NBA and now coming back. And I mean, how did that ever become what it is today? Such an iconic song.
Yeah, I mean, I wake up every morning and go, how did that? Ask the same question, and it was dormant for a good 20 years. I think the real reason is, I mean, there's a lot of sports themes out there, and I think what happened was, I know what happened was that when it was on the air was sort of the halcyon days of the NBA. It was Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen, all the guys, and in the Showtime era, and Marv Albert, and Bob Costas, and so it was a very dramatic time, and when this song was happening, nobody was really thinking, oh my gosh, this song. But I think it's a big nostalgia play now for NBC for sure.
Big time, man. Well, I mean, look, thanks for doing this. If you don't mind, all the way back when you were just a kid. I mean, I know music was a part of your life when you were younger, but what did you want to do? I mean, mom and dad were, for lack of a better term, they were both regular, they had regular jobs. They were regular people. Dad was a chemist, if I'm correct, and mom was in the nursing field. So they're not into showbiz. Well, tell me how this came about.
You've done some research. Yeah, my mom was a retired surgical nurse, raising 3 kids, and my dad was a textile chemist. He was the underwear king. He was the vice president of Hanes Underwear. So I got my underwear free for 18 years. I don't even remember my mom ever washing any underwear. At 18, though, I was on my own. My mom was where she wanted her kids to be musicians, and so at 6 years old, I was placed at a piano for 2 hours every day, and playing scales, playing Hanon exercises, and Rachmaninoff and Stravinsky and all that. And both my sisters, one of them also played piano, and they were older than me, 11 years older than me. The other one played cello. And then, those were, I was born in 52. And so in 1960, it was garage band time. Billy Joel was on Long Island playing in a band called the Hassles. I think every other person was in a rock band, with the Beatles and the Doors and all of it. And so and then I went to a school that, if you look back, when I look back, it really was a performing arts school, is the way you would describe it today, where you had to either play an instrument or be in the choir or be in theater. And so they had all of us put a list down for choices of which instrument we wanted to play. And so I put down drums. And so they gave me a trumpet, because there were no drums in the orchestra. There was percussion. And so, so my whole life was music. And when it was time for me to go to college, my dad enrolled me in NC State University in a textile chemistry program, for obvious reasons, because he thought I would starve to death if I was a musician, and he's probably right then as well. And so I lasted for about 3 years, played on the soccer and the lacrosse teams there, and I barely hung on, like a 1.9 GPA, and I was always in the practice room, in those rooms playing piano, and I knew I needed to switch my major after taking a radio and television course, and I got bit by the same bug you got bit by, sound just back then, sounds and all that stuff. And I went to my professors and said, I want to drop these courses, and I want to change my major. And everybody said fine, because I was bringing down I was messing up they're messing up their curve. And my statistics professor said, no, you have to. We're after the drop ad point here. You have to stick it out. And so I went back to my fraternity house, and 2 of my brothers just said, "Wow, that's ridiculous. Do what we do. You just sign your professor's name to the drop ad card." This is not a story that everybody knows, because I don't enjoy telling it. And so I did, and it worked for a little while. And then 3 months later, and it was summer vacation, the chancellor sent a letter to my dad saying that I had violated the honor code of NC State, and I was being suspended. And
oh no!
And then my dad kicked me out of the house.
Oh no!
So here I am in Raleigh. I drove back to Raleigh because it's all I knew, which is where NC State is, of course. And I worked construction, and I was a waiter, and I got a job sweeping the floors at Rick D's station, WKIX. And that's really how I got started in radio and television, and eventually ended up at Boom Boom, CBS News, and then CBS Sports in 1982, where they hired me to do events like the Tour de France and Ironman and stuff like that, and they needed music. And that's really, sorry for the long story, but that's really how that happened. Yeah.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
Were you like me, John? Did everybody tell you, like, hey, communications, that's the easy major? And then, then you get up in front of 200 people in a speech class, and you're like, wait, Well, this
Yeah,
isn't for me. I
exactly.
didn't expect
Exactly.
this.
Well, but and the wild thing is too is that back then in this was 1973. Not everybody wanted to be Walter Cronkite and Barbara Walters. So there were lots of openings, and in that time period, 73, 74 through 76. That's when Action News happened, and when there was Happy Talk News, where the weatherman would banter with the sports guy, and that wasn't happening before. And
Right.
newscasts were 15 minutes, but all of a sudden, the stations realized they could make some money by extending their newscasts. And so I started left WKIX and started in Raleigh as on the news, and then sent a tape out. Remember how we used to send tapes out?
Tape and resume.
I sent a tape out to Orlando, ended up there for about 4 months. And then there was a guy who was watching television. He was at the Nashville station where Pat Sajak was doing the weather and Oprah Winfrey was a reporter. And he saw me on the news in his hotel room, and he called me up and said, "Young man, you're coming to work for me." And it was like a 1950s film. His name was Irving Waugh. And I just went back to Nashville. They're celebrating their 75th anniversary of the station. And I went there, and Sajak was doing the weather. Oprah Winfrey was on the competing station, and I was there for a year and a half. I sent out tapes, and I got a call from New York, and
Wow.
so CBS called me, and so I ended up as a reporter there. And in that newsroom, to my left was John Stossel, Brian Williams was in there, Meredith Vieira,
Wow.
and then I got a call from CBS Sports saying, "Hey, we want you to come work for us for the network." And I said, "You got the wrong guy." I thought I was being punked. You got the wrong guy. I can't name 3 NFL football teams,
Right.
And they said, "No, the sports we'd have in mind for you," because they see me doing some ad-libbing, news events. Are events nobody knows the rules to, and they were right. Downhill
Wow.
skiing, gymnastics, figure skating, and all of that. And they all needed music themes, and so I started knocking out these themes and just saying, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" And I was doing them in my basement with my Prophet 10 synthesizer with an Oberheim and a Voyager 3 and electric pianos, and that was that sound that's now back. That 80s
Unbelievable
sound. All those instruments are back. And I've just finished a record, and I dug all of that stuff out of storage and used it on the record.
Awesome. John, you were talking about sweeping floors for Rick Dees. People don't realize it wasn't the same Rick Dees that we're talking about now, right? I mean, he was in Raleigh. He didn't become who, I mean, he wasn't Disco Duck at the time. So you were working with a guy who's going to be a star. But what I wanted to ask was, what was your very first job? You had that job. That was your first job after college. You said you were a waiter. You did a couple odd jobs. But what was your very, very first gig ever?
There was a store. It was a furniture store. I can't remember the name of it, and I probably will by the end of this conversation. But it was in Garden City, where I grew up, and it was on 7th Street, and I was the guy that painted the sale signs. So there were those little signs that they stick up. It says the sale price,
right?
And it was I had a printing press, and I had to lay the letters out and print the sign for that. And then after that, when I was still in high school, I managed the Garden City cheese shop. Gosh, I haven't told this story in so long. So it was the guy who ran the cheese shop was named Harold Varnhagen from Germany, of course, and so there was me and another guy, and he would give it. He was always hammered on red wine, and it was he would blindfold us, and then you had to learn the smell of German Tilsiter, Danish Fontina, and cheddar. And so my job was to make the cheddar cheese balls, and you had like a smock, almost like a doctor's coat that you would wear, right? So I would do that, after school, like 3 days a week when I wasn't playing ball, and I had acne during that time too. So I smelled like Clearasil and and feta cheese, which explains why I never had a date when I was in high school. So that was probably my most memorable first job was working at the Garden City Cheese Shop. Yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely a different first job for sure. I haven't heard that one yet. That's good. That's really good, though. I've heard a lot of good ones. That's a good one, though.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
What about the moment, if there was one? I mean, you have such a long career, from being a reporter to Entertainment Tonight, the sports themes. I mean, you're, kind of a renaissance man, John. Radio show, albums, tours, the whole nine. Was there I don't want to say a big break, but was there a moment, a phone call, a particular thing that changed your life forever? Was there a moment that you could tell me about that was not necessarily a big break? You've been working a long time and hard at becoming who you've become, but that one thing, that life-changing thing, what was it?
I think it was being kicked out of school. I was homeless for about 4 or 5 months. I had a pup tent that I had from Boy Scouts, but when my dad called me into his office in Winston-Salem in our house, and he was holding the letter from the chancellor that said I had broken the honor code. He went through this whole thing. He said, "You have shamed me. You've shamed your mom. You've shamed your mom's bridge club. You've shamed the underwear division of Hanes." And I had a hard time keeping a straight face, and he was holding it, like he was. He was a chief petty officer in the Navy in World War II, and he was, if he hadn't done that, and if the statistics professor hadn't turned me in for forging his signature, I'd probably be making underwear now. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was a seminal moment, was being in a tent in a park in Raleigh, and I was just back there reliving all of this, 53 years ago. And I would wake up in the morning with the sun, and my phone was a payphone that was about 20 yards away, and I would give that phone number out. And then when the sun went down, I couldn't even, as depressed as I was, I couldn't even drink because I didn't have any money. And so I would say that was really the time. And then I tell this story to communications kids now, where I went to the radio station at a certain point after about 2 months. I said, I have to do something, and I was a golden spoon kid growing up in Garden City. I mean, we pretty much had everything. And then all of a sudden I had nothing, and not even a future, right? And so I went to WKNC radio on the campus of NC State. And I knew a guy there, and I said, "Is there a chance that I could use your facility to do a demo tape?" Because I'd gone around to several radio stations in town, thinking that I'd be able, because I'd had a TV and radio 101 course, and so I went around to these stations, and they said, "You don't have any." You don't have any, and you don't have a demo tape. You don't have any skills at all. You don't have any experience. So I went there and I said, "Is there a chance I could get in there and do a demo?" And so the guy gave me the keys to the radio station, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I got in there at like midnight. And I've done this demo on stage before, and people can't believe it. And I basically, they had a manual typewriter, they had a microphone, they actually had like an upright piano for some reason. And I went in there and I did a fake broadcast, and I did. This is something that you would do, right? And I played a stupid theme and with the reel-to-reel tape rolling, and I was like, "This is John Tesh, and WKIX, the Rick D station, they had a newscast called 2020 News." And they still remember this to this day. And so I said, "This is John Tesh, WKIX 2020 News. Today, Dr. Henry Kissinger had this to say about the possibility of peace in the Middle East. We switch you live now to," and I was going on the piano. "We switch you live now to correspondent Maurice Gindi, that's a real name, Maurice Gindi in Cairo.
This is Maurice Gindi in Cairo. Today, Dr. Henry Kissinger had this to say about the possibility of peace in the Middle East.
I think
It's like the old Saturday Night Live bit, but you did it in real life.
Yeah. I think there is a possibility of peace in the Middle East, you know. And okay, back to you in the studio, John. This is John Tesh, WKAX studio. Let's go up to the eye in the sky and Bill Leslie. And yeah, you know, traffic is reasonably heavy. You know, it was like the hippy dippy weather, man, with George Carlin. You know,
unbelievable.
And I took this tape, and I took it to WKIX, right, to the woman at the reception, and I told her my story about being homeless and all that, and I think she really felt sorry for me, and she somehow got it to Scott White, who and you know, years ago they inducted me into the radio Hall of Fame, and I was able to bring Scott there when we told this story together. And Scott called my payphone next to the tent, and I didn't know who he was at the time, obviously. And he goes, and I go, hello. And he goes, is this John Tesh? And I said, yeah, yes, it is. Who's this? He goes, this is Scott White. And I said, who are you? He goes, I'm the news director at WKIX Radio. He goes, where am I calling you? And I said, well, in my office.
Oh, that's so great, man.
He said, did you make this tape? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, all of us over here are laughing our asses off. And if you would go to this far to try and get a job, I'll give you a job. Just come by and meet me tomorrow at the station. And I did. And they literally, I was erasing tapes, you know, erasing cards and sweeping the floor. And as it happens, you know, the Cinderella story where a guy came in drunk on the weekend, and they fired him, and I ended up reading the news on Sunday nights.
There it is. It's just you were prepared. And, you know, what's funny about that whole story is that you weren't really trying to pull a fast one on anybody. They knew you were joking around. They weren't like, "Oh, this guy is doing a really great broadcast." They're like, "Listen to this guy," and the helicopter. They're cracking up, but they were like, "Wow, this guy is taking it this far. You got to come to work." That's such a great story, John. Incredible, man. Incredible.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
Today, these days, keeping you busy. Radio show. What else keeping you busy these days? New album coming out? You're going to be touring? What have you been doing?
I think you just answered your own question. Yeah, it's I realized, you know, in 2015, I walked into a doctor's office here in Los Angeles and walked out with 18 months to live. I had a rare form of prostate cancer, and the doctor told my wife and I that I should get my affairs in order, and so I started doing that, and you know, checking my insurance. I was going to sell my music catalog, which included Roundball Rock, by the way. And my wife just said, you know, she's an Italian from the Bronx, and she just said, no, we're not. This is not us. We're not doing this. And so, long, painful story with surgeries and chemo and all kinds of stuff. Short, we combined the Word of God and what the Bible said about health and healing with some smart people in the medical field, and with visualization, the stuff that I had learned from watching high-level athletes, you know, visualize their success, and then we mixed it with faith. And I'm, you know, 10 and a half years out with the same chance of living to 100 as you do, you know.
Unbelievable.
And so that fight, it didn't just instantly end in success. It took a while. In fact, you know, still on and off, I'm getting scanned and taken care of, you know, and things like that. But when something like that happens to you, you get busy, right? And so my son Gib just said, you know, I'm a grandpa now, so he said, Pop, you know, I never see you fully alive unless you're sitting in a studio or on stage. And so to answer your question about what are you doing, I'm just a year ago when they announced that Roundball Rock was coming back, I just said, you know what, I really love writing sports music, writing big bombastic themes. And so worked for a year with an orchestra with some new live players who were incredible, and created this thing that I call sports. Why not call it that? And so if you put this thing on, you will. It's not easy listening music. It's music to work out to. It's music to get up to, and it's music to be inspired by. And that's really just like when I was 6 years old.
Right.
When everybody wanted me to, well, my family wanted me to make underwear, I was. I knew that sitting at a keyboard was really and creating stuff, and when you're in a van on the side of a mountain in France trying to write music as quickly as possible for that day's Tour de France, you learn very very quickly how to compose the picture.
You remember the old CDs, John, Jock Jams? This reminds me of
Sure.
like maybe
Sure.
like an album full of Jock Jams that people just might not know yet.
Yeah. Well, and part of what I had to do when I was an athlete, so I was a walk on at NC State in soccer and lacrosse, only because their teams were so bad back in 1970, and our teams in Garden City were so good in those sports. So I sat on the bench. This happens to a lot of people. I sat on the bench in Garden City, and then I had an opportunity to play at a D1 school at North Carolina State, just because their programs weren't advanced at that point. And now today the team is number one, the soccer team. But I always realized that working out, running, and all that stuff, just like I'm sure you feel the same way, is really the best way to beat any sort of depression and the best way to get you going. And certainly when I was going through all those cancer treatments, you end up with sarcopenia, which among other things, which is muscle wasting. The treatments that they put you through, your muscles just shrink. And I realized that the only way to survive was to get on the other side of that. So this is my house, and so behind me there is like just the backyard, and it's just filled with kettlebells and battle ropes and slam balls and stuff like that. And so all throughout the day, whether I'm doing the radio show or whatever, it's just designed to stay in shape.
Man, I tell you what, John, beautiful home, and I mean a Renaissance man. Really, there's so much that you do at a high level. It's inspiring to a lot of people. Even listening to your radio show, it seems like you've got words of wisdom all the time. And I never asked this, but if I could, my mom, big John Tesh fan, just broke her hip in 3 places. Carol, she's in the hospital. Any words of encouragement for her?
Carol, I just believe that God wants you well. I just believe that whatever you're going through, the pain and what the doctors are going to do, how they're going to put you back together, that it's just, you're going to be victorious, and just be able to see yourself, whether it's Michael Phelps or Franz Klammer or Carrie Strug, who won the gold medal in the Olympics. They were all able to see themselves on the medal stand. And so your medal stand is walking every day with no pain when you get on the other side of this. And we can both see that for you. And so make sure that you can see that in your mind's eye. We'll be praying for you. Connie and I'll be praying for you, because now we know who you are. And I just see victory for you.
John, thank you so much. And like I said, Mom's a big John Tesh fan. She's been to a lot of your concerts, but I don't want to be out of line. Dad's a big Connie Selica fan. So
yeah, of course. What's really funny is that Connie has stayed friends with a lot of the people that she worked with, and we were just watching, because it popped up on YouTube. We were just watching clips from the show P.S. I Love You that she did with Greg Evigan, who's also a friend. You remember Greg from My Two Dads?
I do.
DJ and the Bear, who's a great singer and songwriter. And we were that was the show, P.S. I Love You. That was the show that she was doing that I met her. I met her in Palm Springs. So yeah, so we just went through 33 years. She's the one that really kept me alive. She's just dropped everything and made sure that I was being taken care of and I was going through my cancer battle. And now we got 3 grandkids, 13, between 9 and 13 years old. And it's a lot of soccer. I won't lie.
That's cool. That's cool. That's a lot of fun. I can't wait to start going to sporting events once again. John Tesh, an absolute pleasure. And thank again, a Renaissance man. I'm pretty pumped for this NBA season to come back too, so I can hear Round Ball Rock. But you've been great. Real pleasure.
It's gonna be fun. I want to see video of you working out to the playlist on sports stuff.
I don't know if you're gonna like that video so much, but you got it. Thanks again, John.
Thanks for the great questions. It was fun.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
John Tesh from Entertainment Tonight, of course, a very talented and established musician. He has the theme song for the NBA this year, Round Ball Rock, which was originally done in the 90s. Yeah-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. It's a very famous instrumental in sports. You know, interesting to hear his mother was a nurse, his father in the underwear business, and actually even pushed John to, have a career in the underwear biz at Hanes, but not for John. So John seemed like he was floundering a little bit, and that tough love from his father saying like, hey, get out of the house, get a job, was an important thing that happened in John's life. I love the story of how he recorded a fake radio broadcast, just kind of like Saturday Night Live, one of those old bits. And it worked, getting him in the biz. And he talked about some of his earlier jobs. And first job was at a cheese shop, which is definitely a first for the Celebrity Jobber podcast. The Sports album by John Tesh, currently out now. And you can go to tesh.com to learn more about the great John Tesh, my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber. Thanks so much for listening. We're consistently in the top 5 on the Apple Podcast Music and Music Interviews chart, so thank you. You can check out past guests and interviews on celebrityjobber.com. So until next week, thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Celebrity Jobber podcast. See you soon. I'm Jeff Zito.